Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about the water cycle and how we use and reuse water every day. So to start off, we are going to look at a general picture of how the water cycle works. As you can see, it flows in an endless cycle. Okay, so the water cycle consists of four different components. We have evaporation and transpiration, which are basically the same thing, condensation, precipitation, and runoff. And we're going to go more into detail about these later, but you can write them down now just to start getting familiar with them. Okay, out of all of the water that we have on our Earth, only 3% of it is fresh water. That's not a lot. So if we think about out of that 3%, only 35% or so of that is water that we can use. The other 70% or so is being stored in ice caps and glaciers. So if you think about it, fresh water is very limited. We have to reuse it and be very cautious that we don't contaminate what we do have. And being in Michigan, we don't really uh, understand why fresh water is so limited because we have the Great Lakes surrounding us. So we have the most fresh water surrounding us in almost the whole entire world. Okay, water can be found in three different states. It can be found in a liquid, a gas, and a solid. It changes states when it's either cooled down, or heated up. So when it's cooled down, the molecules condense and they start to slow down, forming ice. And when it's heated up, the molecules spread out and start moving faster, creating a gas or water vapor. This fact explains how water travels through the water cycle, and we can go from one state to the next. Okay, let's start off with evaporation. Why do puddles disappear on hot days? What's happening? You might see a puddle at the beginning of the day, come back a few hours later and it's gone. Well, the water is turning from a liquid to a gas. So like I was saying, when it gets hot, the molecules spread apart and they turn into a water vapor and rise into the atmosphere. Okay, transpiration is a similar process to evaporation, except the water that is soaked up from the roots of plants goes through the plants and is given off through the plant's leaves as water vapor. It's kind of a similar process, but it goes through the plant's leaves. Okay, just a fact, about 80% of the water that is evaporated comes from our oceans. So as you can see here in these pictures, you can actually see the water vapor rising. Right here is a nice cloud of fog that's forming on a nice morning. Okay, so once the water vapor rises into the atmosphere, what happens next? Well, a process of condensation occurs. When the temperature of the air is cold enough, the water will change from a gas to a liquid. So as you get higher in the atmosphere, the temperature cools and the molecules condense to become a liquid. They don't actually form water droplets, however, until they find a dust particle to attach onto. So here we have a picture of clouds, and clouds are actually billions and billions of water droplets. Okay, so now that we have clouds, the water eventually has to come down. So what happens? Well, the water droplets are actually being held up by updrafts and large air masses. And originally the droplets are not heavy enough to fall. So what they do is they collide and grow in size and weight. And once enough collisions have occurred to override the updraft speed, then the droplets will fall. This process is known as precipitation. We have different types of precipitation. We have snow, rain, hail, and sleet. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these. Here's some pictures. We have rain, hail, and snowflakes. And as you can see, they can vary in different sizes depending on how many collisions occur and what the temperature surrounding the water is as it drops. Okay, so once the water hits the ground, it has a couple of options. One option is it can soak into the soil. Another option is it can run off into lakes or streams. And a third option is it can soak deeper down into the soil, and what happens is it recharges the ground aquifers. And what the ground aquifer is it's basically a gap in the soil where water builds up and is held there for later use. So how do we use groundwater? Well, what we can do is we can actually pump water out of these wells. We can also create dams to channel water into the aquifers where it's easier to access. And we just depend on the stored water for daily use. These aquifers are our main supply of water. Okay, the majority of water movement is contributed by the melting of snow caps. So a large amount of snow on the top of mountains is being stored at the top of mountains until it's melted and then can be used and flows into our lakes and streams. This process is also called runoff. So from this point on, the cycle will just continue over and over. And remember, we need fresh water to survive every day, so use it efficiently. Thank you, everyone. I hope you learned a few things. Go H2O.